All right, happy November, everybody out there in TV land. We're back for another episode of The Closing Table. The one and only Mr. Dan Pizzi of NextHome Brandywine, next to me with that big smile, and the Reading Royals behind him proudly. And down below, the man with the knowledge, the wisdom, and the hat this month. The one and only Hub Rigel, and I am Bay Ragney, and we are here to talk real estate, life, and much, much more on The Closing Table. Dan, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. We got Jeb from the Beverly Hillbillies with us down below today as well. Welcome.
Y'all come back now. You hear?
I guess, what are we on? 23, episode 23. Am I wrong, Bay? Is this number 23 this month?
You're right. You're absolutely right.
I think it is number 23 this month.
It's almost 2 years we've been doing this. Can you believe that?
And we've gotten some good results. And hopefully we're bringing some information to people that's interesting and noteworthy.
Hey, Dan, do you remember when we were talking about doing open houses and people were piping in saying that sometimes people come in and they are very, very lonely, and you're doing the open house and they smother you, and they want you to basically be their counselor, or they're lonely and they want to be your friend, that kind of thing.
I do remember that.
And there's a parallel too with Bay and I. I do a little reselling, just dabbling, because my wife, she's really good at it, even though she doesn't spend a whole ton of time on it. But in the reselling world, guys that are putting on estate sales and garage sales, people do the same thing to the estate sellers. And they're lonely, and they come in and talk to the estate sellers. And they have to be real careful because they're not a licensed psychotherapist.
Right. We see a lot of that. We do see a lot of that where people just want to just come out and see people. We're doing open houses are less and less, of course, because of the current market condition, but we are seeing that still.
Well, yeah, but I would say that it's a good idea.
That's an interesting question.
Go ahead.
What was that, Bay?
No, I was going to say that's an interesting question. Like Hub was saying, do you get in the car business, it'd be tire kickers, but like people who would just come into open houses and like get free donuts and like just to look at a house just to pretend like they're shopping?
Did I tell you that story? So my friend Renee was selling in Chad's Ford $500,000 house, and I did an open house. So I cooked brownies and put them in the oven, get a nice smell and all. I put cookies, where you bake them fresh. I put them out on the counter, just have a little bit, people come through, you grab a little snack. The neighbor comes in with the kids. So that's all right. You want to come through, look at the house. They start eating the food on the counter. Okay, take one, whatever. Not only do they eat it, they're spilling crumbs and chocolate debris all over the floor, all over the hallway. And they just kept. And finally I said, listen, with all due respect, you can go through the house, but you got to go. You're just hanging out. You're eating like it. I could stay home and pick after my son, Joe, and pick his stuff up. You have to go. Like you're just hanging around too much. I do have a tire kicker story on the car sales, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
So we'll talk about real estate as we go on here tonight. But so I traded in my Mustang.
No.
Yes, I did, because.
Whoa! Time out.
I
thought you were trading the truck in.
No, here's what's going on. We're going to extend the lease on the truck. Everybody, hey, this leads into what's going on everywhere. Everybody's got to try to button up their finances because it's getting tight out there, right? So everyone's looking to position themselves. I just did a total look at the office finances, and I restructured some stuff there. And then we took a look at the home side. So everything's tight right now across the board, and everybody's headed into the holiday season, and they're saying, the numbers and the dollars, the amount that's in the bank, everything's getting tight. So Danny's going to be driving, and he's 16, he's going to be 17. I didn't think I was going to be able to get him insured at any kind of reasonable price on the Mustang. So that had a lot to do with it. And right now it's starting to tail off, but the resale value, and therefore what they're going to give you for a used car, is high. So my Mustang was almost 4.5 years old, and they gave me $7,200 less than I paid for the car. That's how much money they gave me.
That's amazing.
I never had and this was a trade to the dealer. So I have another tip for everybody too. I was trying to decide, do I sell the car on the street or do I trade the car in? This is what I was told. Bay, you were in that business, so you might have some insight.
Can I tell you what you were told?
So here's the insight. If I sold it on the street, I would have had to pay capital gains on the money that I made over and above what I owed on the car, right? Because it was a profit. I made a profit on selling the vehicle, right? So it was income, and I would have to claim it as income, right? So you would have to pay taxes on it. I don't know if it's capital gains, but you have to pay tax, whatever bracket you land in on it. So by trading it in, so this might, and I'm a haggler all the time. I do a ton of research, and I would think Hub would be similar, right? A ton of research before I buy anything, especially if it's anything of a decent amount of money. So by trading it in, I reduced my cap cost reduction, which lowered the sale price, which lowered the sales tax I have to pay on the vehicle. So it actually saved me $800 in tax on the vehicle because it wrote down what the vehicle cost minus the cap cost reduction of what my traded value was, and then that's what you pay tax on. So long story short on that, I came in a couple days in a row, and there was a guy in the chair, and we were just talking about this subject. He's got a car that he's 8,000 upside down on. He wants them to give them 8,000 more, so he's 8,000 to the plus instead of 8,000 to the minus. And the guy has a very poor credit score. So you could tell people getting frustrated because my salesman comes out and says to him, "Hey, you're never getting that." He wanted the Viper. He was a used Viper on the lot, right? So he says to the guy, "You're never getting that car. You don't have the money and you don't have the credit." And he turns around and he goes, "See this guy right here? He's got an 800 credit score and he's buying a car for me. So I don't have no more time for you. You got to go." So, a lot of tire kickers out there.
I'm actually in the middle of buying a car too, Dan.
It's an interesting time because just like the real estate and like Hub, I compare things, right? So then I start delving into research and more interest in the cars because I just made a deal. It's the same thing going on with the real estate. You can still get a deal done, but you have to get a little creative and see if the math works for you. And I was talking to my cousin tonight, Jody, who's looking for a car, talking to her this afternoon. And she said, "You're blowing my mind with your numbers." What I was able to do with my Mustang was, and my father talks to me from up there in heaven, says, time to get maximum value out of that car. I was able to trade my car and get maximum return on my car, and therefore put money down on the car that I bought, the Dodge Hornet, to keep my payments. And I never shop on payment. I always shop on bottom line price, right? So if you want a good podcast, Car Edge, caredge.com. It's a father and son, and they give you a lot of information on how to negotiate and how to buy cars. But I was able to take a check back for $3,000 and get into the new car and trade in my Mustang and put my family in a better position because my son is about to drive. You got to be creative and you got to do your homework. And that's the same way when you're buying a house. And I'm one that I don't follow the herd. I went to Jeff D'Ambrosio Dodge, and Bay, they got a bad reputation because they think that the owner is not a nice guy. I was going to say,
you were buying a Dodge. My guy is the guy that sells to all the Eagles, Jalen Hurts included.
Who's that, David?
David Dodge, Mike McVeigh.
Should have told you. I'm going to tell you, I had a great experience with D'Ambrosio. I had a great sales guy. Wait to hear this. Here's one for us. So my sales guy tells me that he was retired. He's about late 50, 60. He used to buy and sell companies. So I said, "How did you end up back here?" He said, "I went on the World Poker Tour and I lost all my money. And nobody's going to hire a guy my age, so I'm back selling cars." Whoa. How do you like that? So we're going to bring Hub in here, but it ties into, if you want to be somewhere, don't listen to all the negative news that's out there. I had a great professional car salesman. I had a great experience with their finance, and I did my own homework. So you can get where you want to be even in a challenging marketplace. And that's what I'm saying to people out there. Lisa Last, one of my agents, just did $1 million this month in sales. You know how hard that is to do in this market? $1 million plus in sales this month.
It's
I think she
amazing.
got like $1.2 million, to believe it or not. And you know why? She outworked everybody. It was pure hustle, pure, I'm going to get this done for my client. My clients need to be here. I want to get financially sound for my family, and I'm going to outwork everybody, even in this market, and make sure I'm getting myself, for my business unit, my clients, in the position where we all want to be in. Hub, what do you got this month, Hub? Let's bring Hub in here.
Let me ask you this: does she do a lot of internet connecting and that kind of thing?
Next to none. Here's the deal with Lisa, right? And a lot of people. She, like myself, has a gigantic sphere of influence. She's from England. She used to be an au pair. She has a big social network with people, and she doesn't put it out there as much, but people do know what she does. And because she's done good work with other clients like myself, people say, you know what? Use Lisa. You know, she's very nice. She's got a great demeanor, and nobody's going to outwork her. And she's got me backing her up like Dave Stinson used to back me up.
Well, when we were talking a couple months ago about from that podcast with Kelly Brown, and the other guy was Mike Bernier, and he was talking about how the concept is that you really don't necessarily pursue success, you attract success because you offer value to people, and then all of a sudden you start getting it because you're talking about what you can do for other people rather than acting desperate or trying to grab success. So it's attracting success rather than pursuing success.
And when does the break point come though? Like, where, you know how it is when you're on YouTube, when does the algorithm change, right? So, you know, there's some frustration levels that's set in there. Like, for example, what you're speaking to, we're continuing, even though financials for everybody are tight. If they tell you different in the real estate world, they're kind of giving you a bunch of BS. It's tight for everybody. It's a very topsy-turvy market. We're continuing, I'm going to say this, Hub, to your point, our advertising efforts. I'll continue with Bay with the socials. I'll continuing within the background, the Reading Royals, who have been excellent partners so far. It's our first year with them. And I just renewed, to your point, our relationship with the Lancaster Barnstormers, who are now 2 times Independent League Baseball champions. But check this out. So I was talking to my rep up there, and I asked her, I said, because the economy is so bad, it's bad, no matter what people want to tell you, what are people renewing? What are you getting as far as feedback when you're talking to people about renewing their marketing and advertising campaigns with the Barnstormers? Now, mind you, they've had success, Hub, right? So when you have success, it breeds, in a lot of instances, more business because you have more exposure. You know what she told me? She said, now this is an independent league, which is not the minor leagues. It's an independent league affiliated with Major League Baseball.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they are a feeder league to the MLB. And what they do is the MLB pays them. The league gets paid, and the MLB uses them to test out the bigger bases, all the new stuff they want to try out. They try it out in the independent league first, like that clock and all that
interesting
stuff.
I didn't realize
it's like a talent development league.
Correct. And so real quick, she said to me, Dan, we have a waiting list this year. I was blown away. So it tells you advertising works. It tells you what you're talking about, works. And I find it interesting because I wanted to stay pat for another year and not run away from what we've built at NextHome.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to find a way to continue down the same path as far as trying to expand our business by doing good business and expanding that sphere and mixing in partners like the Barnstormers and like the Reading Royals.
Did Bay want to mention anything about buying cars and vehicles and that kind of thing? I would say that they say that SUV sales are not real popular right now.
Let me share this with you, Bay. I don't want to talk over you, but this is interesting. So I was the first guy to say, I'm not going to
Did you-
buy an EV. I'm not buying an EV. I'm not. I'll never buy one of those things. I'm an old gas, Dodge Charger type guy. I'm not going to buy an EV. They gave an EV credit of $10,000 off the sticker. So guess who bought an EV? $10,000 off the sticker. Like you're saying, they're not. And my car now is a little bit of a crossover SUV. It's called a CUV, crossover utility vehicle. It's more of a compact utility vehicle. That's what they're kind of shifting to. Hub a little bit smaller now. But I was able, and that's another thing about making a deal. Have those conversations. See what incentives are out there from a mortgage perspective, like Bo DeForge and CMG home loans. But I was able to get 10 grand from Stellantis, who used to be Chrysler, off the sticker because it's a hybrid. Isn't that interesting? That's a lot of money. It's a
hell of a lot of money.
25% off the sticker. It's a lot of
Bay,
money.
did you want to share any car news?
Oh, I'm actually looks like getting a car myself.
Oh, here we go. We got breaking news. We should have a breaking news sounder here on the Closing
Little
Table
ticker.
podcast.
The ticker.
So what
I
do we
didn't know
got?
if it was.
There's like so much going on, as
Bay's positive Bay now. He's good.
Wait. I've been trying to be positive Bay for years, but now that positivity is finally truly working. Things are finally coming into place. There is a big light at the end of the darkness finally, and things are turning around in my life, and I'm very happy, excited, and hopefully, fingers crossed, probably Monday I'll have my new wheels.
So what are we getting?
It's a 2017 Kia Sportage.
Very similar back to what I just bought. My neighbor has one down the street.
Crossover, yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
And that's sort of an SUV too, huh?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But now here's the thing too. Like now here I'm a person who, and like many people in this country, this beautiful country we live in, who had amazing credit 5 years ago, went through a divorce, went from an 800 credit score down to at one point a low 400 credit score, rebuilding very slowly. That credit score will crash quick. To rebuild it takes time. Now it's like, just got a credit card. Now I'm getting that first car loan again. So those little steps will put me in place to hopefully in the following year be able to buy a house again.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's the truth. And that's the truth for people when they talk about credit. It's going to be a step-by-step thing to rebuild your credit.
Totally.
And you can jump up in points quickly. And really, to buy a house, you only need a 640 credit score on FHA. It's about a 640. You can actually buy a house with a 580 credit score. But you need about a 640 to put yourself in good FHA position to buy a house. So I was looking at some numbers relative to the housing, because everything has gone up so much over the last 5 years. And the car prices have jumped. Stellantis over the last 5 years, which is Chrysler products, they've jumped 49% the car prices.
Wow.
And the manufacturers know this, and Stellantis says that they're 13.5% overpriced. They know they're overpricing just like the houses, right? But they rather sell less units and make more margin. But they've risen their rates 49%. And right behind them, I think, is Hyundai at 48%, Toyota and Honda at the bottom, but still at 25 and 27% respectively the last 5 years. Now, the housing market, very similar. I'm reading all this stuff and I'm comparing both kind of the housing and the car markets. The housing market is up about the same thing, about 50% in value over 5 years. And right now, relative in our local market, average house price, I just put it up for Philadelphia, $350,000. And that is a median price. So there's no more 180, 200, 220 houses. You're up into the 300 range, even for most starter homes, unfortunately. And with the interest rates being where they are, just like we told the story about me buying the car, we got to get creative. You got to use professionals that know how to get you to where you want to be at the number you want to be at. And it can be done. Lisa's proved it. Bo DeForge at CMG Home Loans, who spent some time with me this weekend with an event up in Lancaster, up in Reading with the Royals. Me, him, and my son and his wife went. We had a great corporate event up there. But we were talking about this. We talked about negativity, right? There's so much negative news in the housing market. A lot of it is factual. But it doesn't mean you can't get to where you want to be with the proper guidance, the professionals, and maybe expanding your search a little bit. Maybe you might want to not get 2 acres, you go to 1 acre. But to just hang it up and say, I'm done, I'm going to wait this out. If you can, maybe you want to, maybe, but you don't have to. I've been doing this 18 years. Me, I love Dave Stinson and the group that trained us. I love my mortgage people. We can get you there. Honestly, Lisa's proved it. Lisa's only been in this business for 5 years. She just did, leading up to Thanksgiving, over $1 million in business at this time in this challenging market, right up against holidays. And she had 2 people that had to move. She did another deal that they didn't have to move, but they found the right house. One lady sold her house and really needed to get into another house because she was sitting on the money and needed to get into another house. And before I think taxes kicked in, and another lady needed to move because of logistics and the size of the house, and they really needed to buy and sell. And Lisa was able, those very different scenarios, get the people to where they wanted to be. And you know where it was? Listening, hard work, and flat out. She went out, I think, no lie, 17 straight days, driving around, burning up gas, driving an hour and a half everywhere for these people. But she got them where they wanted to be. And that's a tribute to our office. We're going to out-hustle everybody. We're going to give you that. Bay always talks about it, right? The humans over houses, personalized service. Go ahead, Hub.
Well, yeah, but see, from listening to both of these different other podcasts that we were talking about, the one with Tom Ferry and then this other one with Kelly Brown, it's as if I still think that we're going to have to get back to some open houses. I think open houses are a good thing. And it's just, I mean, and it's not just because you never know. You really never know who you're going to meet.
100%. And another thing, Hub, is right now
with your baseball thing.
And there's some inventory sitting on the market, right? So open houses help to expose the value in a property, get people in there, like you said, help garner new business. But you are seeing them. I mean, I see them every week now. They are popping back up because the inventory is sitting for a minute now because of the price range of stuff.
Now, you were talking about earlier about how somebody bailed on you that you were going to have as a guest on our podcast here. And it was really interesting because no matter what, I try to never, ever burn a bridge. And I'm always trying to connect with people. And I told Kelly Brown, I mentioned her. I told her that we talked about her on the podcast. I mentioned it. They thought it was pretty funny that I did that. But I told her that we did. And then she texted me back. She said, she just said, I can't find, when does it start? When do you start talking about me? Because it's just going on and on. Like, when do you start talking about me? And so I said, it starts at 12 minutes. And then I never heard from her again. But we're still friends, I think, So we're still friends, So like I say, again, I don't burn any bridges with anybody, but I was trying to connect with her, because I thought maybe she'd be flattered, but maybe she didn't care that we talked about her on our podcast.
And I think it's the way, my mother always says, it's the way you speak to somebody. It's not maybe sometimes what you're trying to get across. It's how you couch it. Same thing with our guest. You could have said, hey, listen, I can't make it on. I'm busy this month. But, we always, guess what? Like Bay, how many times, Bay, do we have to chameleon and just keep moving forward to get to where we want to be, right? I mean, that's part of the topic tonight.
Well, I didn't ask her to be on. I just tried to let her know that we were talking. We were flattered. We were making a little tribute to her, and she didn't seem to care about it. Or
what I think? Hey, Hub, I've been saying this all week. I think people are very interested in themselves and their own edification, a lot of people. and don't look out in some instances. This isn't everybody, but for the good of the whole, I think we need to get back to that on a lot of different levels. Because I think if I always say with our office, if everybody's eating from the pot, then everybody's belly's full and everybody's pretty happy because we're making money, we're doing good business with clients, and we're churning and moving along. And I think you need a lot of teamwork and collaboration. I've heard of so much negative news this week on the street on so many different topics with the election, and the car prices are high and the real estate prices are high and people are tight on the budget. I think you have to spin that. Look how many good things are going for you right now, Bay. I mean, you have to spin that where you can't talk negative all the time. I mean, you got to sit down and say, hey, how can we turn this frown upside down and make things better? And that's what I'm telling people about real estate. It's not doom and gloom. There's a lot of challenges. We've been through this before, but we can still get people where they need to be. Maybe they're going to have to get into a house and refinance later, but you might be able to get, the house you want, and you might have to bite the bullet until these real estate interest rates relegate a little bit across the board. But it's not all negative news.
Okay, I want to say something about a house, how people are real. They have a certain thing that they feel that they have to have in a house for it. Because I'm telling you, when I inherited this house, there was a lot of stuff that had been built in this house. And I said, why? I'm not going to keep that way and that kind of thing. And there were so many things to work on. It ended up being like, hey, now I see why my father put that there. And I'm going to keep it that way because actually that's a good thing that he did that, because I got used to it and I figured out that there was a reason for it to be that way. So what if you moved into a house that wasn't quote unquote updated and that kind of thing, and you could actually, it was something you could sell up from? What do you think about that, Dan?
Give me at the end of that. What do you mean sell up? Explain that a little bit.
You get it for a deal that you know that it's going to be worth at least as much as you put into it.
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people even doing some flips with cosmetic stuff. I think that people lose sight of what to look for when they're buying a house. Get away from the cosmetics, get away from the countertops, get away from the floors. Look at the high ticket items, because you know what happens. Some people will go in and see an avocado rug and a 1970s orange countertop and a bathroom with the cast iron tub, but then they forget to look at other things. And I'll say to them, did you notice they have new windows? Did you notice it's a new roof? Did you notice it's a new HVAC? And when you talk about these things, you could be talking about $30,000 to $35,000 worth of work, and you're worried about something that you could put 8-10 grand into and have your, like Cub said, you could paint, you could live with some of it, like the cast iron tub, for example. You can powder coat them again. I had my rental property. They came in and they painted the tub. It looked brand new. You can paint the tiles in the bathrooms. So you could do a cheap fix on something that's made of good quality, like the old tile and tubs. You can paint them and bring them up to modernization. And, you got a value there.
This is a style thing that people have to have it this certain way in order to keep up with the Joneses, that kind of thing, to me. Or
It's
the
true.
vision, the image of the person that they wish that they have to be, that thing, that identity, to be upper class or whatever.
You know what people will do, Hub, when they're trying to sell a house? They'll rip out the old rugs and put a 59-cent a square foot cheap click-clack floor in. That's total junk. But people, when they walk in, they'll reach down, they'll touch it. Oh, look at that. And I'm thinking, in my head, that's a piece of crap, that floor. It's junk. They bought it at the mill place for like end of lot. They threw it in, but like Hub said, in someone's mind, they had to have hardwood floors walking in that door. And so, there's hardwood floors in here. Listen, forget that. What kind of values in this house? The location, the price, the neighborhood, or is the major components in good shape? Especially if you're tight on a dime and you don't have a whole lot of money, because you can put rugs in for $1,000, but that roof's going to cost you $12,000. I try to give people insight. I try not to overstep, but at least give them some insight of what I'm seeing and see how receptive they are to my input.
You know what they would need? They would need a bare basics list of the major items that need to be working, like the AC, okay, the roof. Does it have termites that need to, is there any wood damage?
Right.
Those are like real super basics.
You know what I do? I'll give you an example on the wood damage. When someone comes in to do a home inspection, because the wood infestation inspection is another $150. What I say is let the home inspector go through. If he sees wood damage and he thinks he sees termites, then you get the termite inspection done. But the home inspector is going to cross over and notice any termites or wood damage. So why do a double inspection? Now, some lenders on certain loans need a termite cert. That's a different story. But to Hub's point there with the termites, I wanted to make that point. You don't have to spend that extra 150. Let the home inspector look at it. If he thinks it needs a further inspection, then they do so. Some of the worst looking houses have the highest. That's a good point, Andrew Harrison. And I think, Andrew, to your point, some people, and I may be partially guilty, don't have the creative mind sense to notice that. And somebody that's a flipper or a builder or has the eye for that, who is in some kind of a design field, they'll say, you know what? This house has a ton of potential. Well, maybe some of the market would say, I don't want that. It's a piece of crap. So it's in the eye of the beholder. And you can make some good money if you have vision on some of these houses.
Well, there's another thing about flipping houses. And let's say you want to buy a house as an investment. You actually always should try to buy a house as an investment. It should be something that you're going to be able to at least break even on when you sell it. Okay. And another guy, and I'll review. I'll send you some more of his videos. But he said if you flip a house and you didn't lose any money, or you lose a little bit of money, but he said you would learn a lot just from flipping a house. If you didn't lose any money, you did great, because the next one you flip, you're probably going to make some because of that experience and that education.
I have a gentleman now I'm working with. It's his first one he's flipping. And he's hit some hiccups and he's learned from them. Let's talk about the house values compared to the stock market. I had a buddy call me who's has some money, and he says, Dan, I might be diversifying into hard assets and buying real estate. Do you know the last 5 years, just don't hold me to it, but the real estates have went up 8 to 10% a year? Where are you going to get that return on investment in other sectors like the stock market? Consistent in increases. We haven't seen a downturn in home values in years. Here you go. We got some new people here today. Cameron Bell on here. What do we got, Bay? Read that one for us.
When I bought my house 12 years ago, it was a fixer-upper. And ever since we have fixed things and upgraded things, the value has gone up so much in our house.
And that's a great point by Cameron, right? So certain things add a lot more value. Certain things are for you to enjoy in the house that might not add value, but a lot of things add a lot more value that can really push your house. If you do the kitchen, the bath, if you finish your basement, it can really push the value house up significantly.
And if you can find a good handyman that you can, even if you can't do any of the work with them, but you can be there with them, and you can, whenever they need a tool, you hand them a tool. Whenever they need a board or whatever, you can go to Home Depot while they're working. You can save a lot of money.
I just hired an electrician to put an outlet in the garage for the new EV so I can plug it in. And I found the quotes to be high, and I ended up getting a decent guy to do it, but it was an interesting experience. So some are better than others as far as finding the right partners. I'll tell you, a lot of the good handymen and all are very, very busy. The guy I ended up getting told me he's rather doing the small jobs than the bigger jobs anymore. And it used to be really hard pressed to find someone to do one outlet or fix a kitchen cabinet or do something like that. But to find a good handyman is gold. It's gold.
Yeah, and you treat that guy like gold, and you treat him like when you're a salesman. There's a guy named Ernie Lansford who wrote a book, and it's called The Poetics of Sales. And in the Poetics of Sales, he talks about celebrated relationships. And so that means that when you go to meet with your customer or anybody like that, that you guys are so good of buddies, you bond with that person so good, you are actually celebrated whenever you get to be around them and whenever you work with them.
Yeah, it's a great point.
And so, yeah, and actually that's a good book. And I'll see if I can get you a copy there, Dan. But the celebrated relationship. And so you want it to be a celebrated relationship so that when your worker comes over, he wants to work for you, and he's looking really, really forward to it. You want him to be very, very happy.
What do we
Yeah,
got, Peg?
I
Chime
have
in here, man.
another question.
Holy cow, we got 3 questions this month.
This
Not from Mom. Go ahead, Bay.
that's actually, it's not on YouTube. It's on Facebook, and it's from a guy John who I met when I first moved here to Nashville, and I was driving Lyft, and he was one of my uh, people I drove, and in conversation he's telling me he's in the real estate business and blah 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 blah, and became friends. But he asked, how can I get good qualified buyers?
There's, I'm old school. You know, I tell you what's going on right now. Buyers are, I could speak to Philadelphia market, the 6 counties around our area here in Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania. The buyers aren't our problem right now, but good qualified buyers, you can, the simplest answer, which I don't do, it's because I wasn't trained that way, is buy leads. Buy leads off of Zillow. Homes.com right now is very good with leads, buyer leads, because a lot of people click online when they're looking for houses and stumble on sites like Zillow and Homes, and they get their information. They can share them out with the realtor. You know how I get my business? Besides my sphere of influence. So what you need to do is go through. I have 1,000 people on my phone. Hit your people up, because if they aren't selling, they might know somebody that is buying or selling. And you could just say, stay in constant contact and stay in front of people. But I'm going to go back to my grandfather, Joseph Faciolo. It was just Veterans Day. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He swam 2 miles to shore in the Atlantic Ocean. Could you imagine that? You know what he said? Go in the diner and sit in the diner and have a coffee and listen to other people. Do you know how many times I've unfortunately or fortunately overheard people talking about real estate or saying they want to buy a house? And I say, hey, I happen over here. Here's my card. I own a real estate company. We can help you. These neighborhood diners that all kinds of different people go in. And what do you think we do? I'll give you this example. We do the Reading Royals, and we are on the radio and the TV broadcast. So we had Mr. Eric Jeschberger was on the program last month, and he does a read for me at the beginning of the game, but he said to me, why don't you voice your own commercials?
Yes.
Right? So, because he said, and I thought, I have that Delco accent. Nobody wants to hear me voice the commercial. So he said, listen, then when they hear you in the arena and they see you, they put your voice, because one radio and TV, but a lot of people listen to it on the radio and arena. So this is how you get business, right? So 2 folks in front of me are season ticket holders to the Royals from day one. Nice older couple, super nice. Always have old school jerseys on. Me and my son always say hello to them. We sit right behind them with our season tickets. So long story short, Eric Jeschberger comes down to say hello to us out of the booth at intermission. This is how cool the guy is. So the lady, we start talking, and she says, I heard you on the radio. I heard your voice on the radio broadcast. And I said to Eric, I think he sits behind us. We talked to him and his son. So we had that conversation when Eric came down, but it puts me on the map. Now the lady knows I'm NextHome Brandywine, right? That's so every time they hear us, they think real estate. So it really is about expanding your sphere and getting in front of people and growing relationships. And when we do these things with the Barnstormers and with the Royals, it's about not only about the real estate, but we could talk about other things. So my buddy owns a trucking company, and one time we had a guy in from China, spoke very little English, but it was the baseball world championship, that world classic baseball thing they do. And my buddy, when we left, he goes, you talked to that Chinese guy for like 30 minutes, but the dude doesn't speak much English. What the hell were you talking to this guy about? I said, baseball. Like we figured it out, because we were talking something other than business, but we mixed in the business, and then we got business from the guy. My buddy's like, hey, that guy's sending us business. I said, because we talked about the World Baseball Classic.
There you go.
And I don't know, he must have known, he didn't know shit for words for English. We found a way, 20-some minute guy. He's like, how in the hell you talk to that guy so long? But this is what you have to do to get business. And it's a slow build. We're still not where we want to be with our volume in our office. It's a slow build, and you work your way into it. And it really is about once, and Hub mentioned this, that algorithm to you do good business and then your business grows. I mean, that's kind of my 2 cents on
Dan,
it.
real quick, I just want to say I have 2 things to discuss off air. I got to throw at you a couple
Yes.
of things. So before I forget,
Adding Cameron, my mother gives me his. My mom texts me. Another comment from Cameron about adding a deck will add value. 100% it will add value. There you go, Cameron. I'm a little late. My mom must be getting the feed ahead of me here. It'll add a ton of value, Cameron. It could add $10,000 to $20,000 in value on your house.
oh, here's a good comment from Andrew. It's hard to buy a house anymore given how everything has gone up. I think people just don't have the means to buy in this current day, which of course makes it hard to sell a house for what it's worth.
I agree and I disagree only from factual data. Houses are selling because the demand is high. We have, and leave that up, Bay, so I can break this down a minute. His first point there is saying how everything is going up, 100% correct. You really have to sit down and look at the hard numbers. I tell everybody 1 + 1 is 2. It's not 3. It's not 1. It's 2. Let's look at the numbers to see if we could potentially get you where you want to be in the challenging market. That's the first point. People are struggling with the means to buy because the home values have went up, like we said, 50% over the last 5 years. And from few years ago, won't talk politics, but from that administration, this administration, interest rates have jumped a ton. They went from 3% to close to 8%. So that is affecting people's buying power as well. Selling. It's gotten out of control with the ask prices, and things are selling over ask, and things are starting to level out just a little bit. But the bottom line is everything is still selling right now in the affordable range, which is that $300,000 to $500,000. It's unbelievable, but this is a fact. The $300,000 to $500,000 range, things are still selling swiftly. And anything that's in a reasonable range of like $290,000 to $330,000, $340,000, they're popping off like crazy. I'm going to tell you why. People have been sitting on the sidelines for 2, 3, 4, 5 years waiting to buy a house because before COVID, post-COVID, the demand has varied because of COVID put us down a little bit, but the demand is still, I mean, you put a house up, it's going to sell. If it's in the 700 range, 800 range, $1 million range, yeah, it's going to sit a little bit. But I agree with most of Andrew's premise there where you can, and we talked about this earlier in the podcast, we can still get things done. Lisa just put 5 people in over 1.2 million in business. It's feasible. It can get done. But Andrew, to your point, there's a ton of challenges, very much so. So do I have to invite Lisa on, Mom? So, Mom, that British accent will take over the show. We can't have her. We'll get her on. You know what? I mean, it's amazing. She didn't want to take credit. I said, Lisa, what you did this month is absolutely amazing. I know my cousin Linda Johnson last December pulled off a $2 million month. Those months leading up to holidays when we tend to slow down, it's just amazing the effort that people put in. And I really think when people are doing a good job, because everybody's negative, you have to acknowledge them and say, hey, great job. You know, Ann Maroney and I just put a deal together in Coatesville. Ann had the seller, I had the buyer. Me and her had done the left side of the twin. We just got the right side of the twin, and we pieced the deal together and got it done.
But here's the thing that you sort of didn't elaborate on is that you do purchase some leads. Is that right?
I don't. I haven't, not now. I have in the past. And Hub,
would you recommend it to the guy that asked, though?
I don't think it's a bad idea, but here's what I just talked to Mark Reale, my friend Mark, who does purchase a lot of leads. And you know what he said he's getting from homes.com right now? A lot of and this is to Andrew's point. So a lot of the leads that he's getting are being marked as long-term buyer leads, which to Andrew's point means they're not ready right now. They might not be fiscally ready right now, or they might not want to dip their toes in this current marketplace because of interest rates and house prices. So I don't think right now, Hub, that the leads are as good as they were when the market was a lot different than this current climate. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. But it's interesting too is that um, there are people from different areas, like we were talking about with the computer technology that they're able to use and advertise that their people are actually, if they hustle enough that way, they're going to get a whole wider audience than they can if just in their own area.
I agree. And then there's some different things right now where you can use some AI and you can use some analytics to kind of break down neighborhoods and say who is the most likely to sell. And then you can kind of match them up with your buyers. Because let me tell you something, the best way to get buyers is to list houses. Hub, what's one of the best ways to get a buyer, Hub? What's your
List
favorite?
houses.
Open house.
Yeah.
The open houses, like you talk about. When I have a listing, you have a bunch of people coming in that are looking to buy a house, right? And I would say at least half of them may or may not have a real estate agent. So that's another great way to get listings or get buyer leads when you have a listing.
Yeah, and the other thing we were talking about how that people, there are a lot of tire kickers and people that'll come in and eat all your cookies and that kind of thing, but you got to be really patient with that
You do.
because you never know, that person that ate all your cookies actually might turn you
It's
on to somebody,
100%.
give you a great connection. So you got to be really patient, and as my mother used the word long suffering with people in an open house.
That's a great point. It's a
So
great
you've got
point.
to be very tolerant. I mean, way more tolerant than you should be, because in the long run, you never know who you're talking to. You
It's
really
true.
don't.
I told you this story. I bought the play set, and I sold the play set to a guy on Marketplace, and I gave him my card. And 3 years later, he called me back and said, "Hey, you gave me your card. We're looking to sell and buy a house."
Here's an interesting topic that I don't think we've ever discussed.
Let's mark it
on the
down
closing table.
for a future show as well.
Tiny houses, is that a thing going on at all up in
Not here, but let me tell you, Cameron, to your point, people, it's almost getting to be like the mobile home communities. They're doing tiny home communities. And another thing they're doing is pods, where you're actually living in a container style, where you have a pod and you're sharing the kitchen, bathroom, and all, but you have the pod as kind of your safe space, your place. And then it's like kind of a communal, but you have a specific space. But to Cameron's point on the tiny homes, I think it's going to be, especially for young people, they don't want all that land. They don't want all that. They want to travel. They want to go to sporting events. This is going to be, I don't know how soon, but I'm seeing a lot more with the tiny home spaces and not so much Philadelphia marketplace, but imagine buying up land like a mobile home park, a trailer park, and then putting tiny homes on there.
You know what? It's funny that that Cameron brought this up. Dan, I used to do a delivery for Acme Supermarket for their corporate office. I used to do a few days a week, and their corporate offices are in Malvern, and on what is that, Lancaster Avenue,
Yeah.
Lancaster Pike. When I would go out there, off to head towards 29, on the as I was heading out from 352, I would go
I know
down
where you're talking. Yeah.
make a right on Lancaster. On the right hand side, there used to be like a little trailer set up there, and the guy was selling tiny homes.
I'm gonna give you. We talked about this, but I'm gonna tell you quickly. When I went to a meeting with the rowhouse.org people up in Lancaster, East Lampeter Township is allowing people to subdivide their parcels and put another structure on their parcel. So a lot of people, for their senior citizen parents and all, if they had a couple acres, say out there in East Lampeter, they would buy a tiny home tied into the water and sewer and put it right on the same parcel as an existing. Not all municipalities allow that from a ordinance standpoint, but East Lampeter's doing a lot of them, and a lot of the manufactured home builders are starting to go the way of building these tiny homes.
And I want to say something, as if you ever are going to build something like that, remember, you don't have to have, I know this from my own experience remodeling a pool house, is that you don't have to have a full-size sink in that tiny home for the kitchen. You can have a bar sink that's like a 12 by 12.
Right.
And in the bathroom, you can make the sink small, a little tiny like uh, airplane sink. It's like in the
Right.
airplane bathroom for the bathroom, because that will really save. Because we stayed in one of those container homes, and they put full size accoutrements in it, like the sinks and stuff, and there was not enough room to move
Right.
around in
Right.
it.
Right.
Hmm.
And so you can actually be creative with the space that you have and figure out how you can actually better use that prioritizingly.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think people are going to look to spend less because the cost of home ownership, not just the monthly mortgage and interest and tax payment, but just the cost for repairs, upgrades, maintenance. And that's why you're seeing a lot of homes with deferred maintenance. But when the market was booming, even now, people are buying these homes for inflated prices, but they have a lot of deferred maintenance. So you really got to look at what is that deferred maintenance? Is it cosmetic or is it mechanical? And how much money do I have to put back into the house when I buy it? Because it could
And
cost you a bundle.
a lot of tiny homes actually are mobile homes. They actually have a hitch on them, and they can be moved very, very easily.
Hmm.
Um, and so that, but at the same time, uh, and that would be actually the kind you would actually probably want to buy, and you would, if you could buy it used, that would be even better.
And they're doing
Second,
long-term rentals with those too, where if you like Airbnb stuff, where they're putting them in strategic locations, even like Bay up in the Poconos and stuff, and they're placing them, in the woods or whatever, and then you do a long-term rental, you have your winter vacation spot, but they're doing these tiny home concepts. It's prevalent, it's coming, it's
but
out there.
it just there's people there. A lot of millennials are doing this kind of creative stuff, and they take sheds, like, and they build on the shed, and they make the shed bigger. They take the loft and make it a sort of a sec where the bed is up in
Yes,
there,
yes,
and
yes.
they do all kinds of creative things so that they can have their first home.
Well, can't you even buy, um, basically like sheds from Home Depot that you can construct into a house now? Dan, we lost you.
No
Yeah,
voice.
yeah, Dan, click out and come back on. Let me.
Yeah, actually, so we don't have any dead air, Dan.
Yeah,
Bay,
hold on. I'm gonna kick Dan
but
from the studio, and then he can come back on.
and what I was going to say is, and I could sort of answer that question here just to keep the ball rolling here, is that actually they do make that. Actually, that's not a new thing. Even Sears used to be able to buy a house out of the Sears catalog back in the day.
Really?
But yeah, and there's a whole city in Illinois or someplace like that that has Sears Roebuck houses in it. And what they did
That's
with,
amazing.
yeah, it is amazing, and there are sheds like that, but there are sheds also that are you buy the biggest shed at Home Depot, and they can then you can customize it to where you can make it into a living quarters.
Huh. That's pretty wild. It's amazing what the way things are going. I know.
And you know where those are popular, Bay, is like in the Midwest, places like Minnesota and uh, Michigan, where people can actually afford to buy the land.
Mm,
And they're millennials. They're young people, and they just figure out a way to buy some land, and then they build a shed on it, and then they build onto the shed, and they put two sheds together, etc.
wow.
Am I back?
You're
You
back.
are back.
You know who got me back? My son. So my son's my engineer. So we're going to wrap up here soon, but real quick, by me, the people that manufacturing the sheds are manufacturing tiny homes, and that is getting more and more prevalent because I passed there today and I was thinking, boy, my son would love that as a gaming room. If we put that in the backyard, he'd never leave. But they are starting to manufacture, Bay, to your point, these tiny homes.
Well, actually, you know what, too? There, a friend of mine who I know from the wrestling business who um, does a wrestling show up in the Philadelphia area. He works with special needs children, and he was actually like a full time companion to this one kid. I mean, he was a guy; he was probably in his
Right.
20s, but what his parents did was, I guess they had like a nice piece of land on their property. They built him a tiny home on their property to give him like his own independent living space.
Yeah, and like I say, like we were just saying, there's all kinds of things you can do with that. Um, and I have a friend who sells tiny homes, but he said a lot of times, this was right after COVID was over. He told me that it was really hard to do those, to sell those in a lot of ways, because they were slow on building them, because it's really hard to find the skilled labor to actually make them to where you can make really high quality ones and be profitable.
All right, we're going to put Hub on the spot right now, Hub. You're put right on the spot. Hub, you're going to procure him as a guest for the Closing Table podcast?
Procure him? Well, now see, I haven't talked to this guy in a long time, but that would be an interesting.
It would be. We should look into
this
that.
guy. I'll actually try to contact him and see if he wants, if I can get him to do that. He kind of has become a more recluse lately. He's actually a very he's an author, and he's a really, really amazing person.
My mom's telling me to look at the chat.
Now,
Michael Schmidt.
I don't think that's Mike Schmidt of the Philadelphia Phillies.
That's
fame.
Mike Schmidt of co-ownership of NextHome Brandywine. That's my brother-in-law. He says, and on my glasses on, he says, Walmart offers barn-style tiny homes with a second floor for $9,270 delivered in just 7 days.
Wow.
Isn't Walmart amazing and everything?
That's amazing.
Let's before we wrap up, we're in 56 minutes here tonight. We've all been real busy, so we didn't prep much. This group here, I got to say how much I appreciate you two guys. Hub always bringing the intellect and getting us kind of steered on the path of the monthly podcast, and Bay's steady hand and his experience of guiding these things. I enjoyed the heck of it. Another great show. We seem to pull this off on a regular basis.
I got to say, I love the look, Hub. I love the hat. I think it looks great on you.
Well, we had some friends that stayed here with us that actually came from Cornwall in England, and they were real proud of coming here and getting a cowboy hat. And it's one of these like this. And I said, that ain't no cowboy hat. That's a Crocodile Dundee hat. But they thought it was a cowboy hat. They're from that's like a resort town there in England, in the south of England, is Cornwall.
I actually worked with a guy from there.
Tell them to come to Nashville.
I want to get down there. Yeah, we want to get down there.
Daniel get a cowboy hat.
I was telling them that right, like maybe 2 miles from where I live is the Resistol factory, where they make Resistol cowboy hats.
Oh wow!
And they actually wanted to go to the factory. I guess they have a tour, and they have a gift shop there too.
We don't tap into his genius enough. It's always a tepid area, tapping into his genius. But let's wrap this up.
Barely scratch that surface.
I'm telling you. Let's wrap this up this month for all your real estate needs. Like we talked about over the course of this hour, we will not be outworked. We will make sure that you're protected all the way through the transaction. It's humans over houses, as Bay talks about all the time. It's nexthomebrandywine.com. If you're in our region, look for us advertising. The Lancaster Barnstormers, we're on the right field wall. They have a great Christmas display this year. And we were heavily involved the hockey season with my favorite team. And we had Eric Justberger on last month, the Reading Royals. So follow us there as well. Again, nexthomebrandywine.com. And appreciate you guys again every month. And Bay, take us out of here.
Hey, everybody. Like Dan said, nexthomebrandywine.com. They are the real estate office and agency, not only in his region, but across the country.
Great
Dan
point.
will direct you wherever you are across the country to the proper office, the proper place, because no matter what office of Next Home you go to, they're going to have the mindset like Dan and his agents, humans over houses.
And don't forget, we're coming to you from, real quick, Bay, we're coming from Tennessee, we're coming to you from Texas, and we're coming to you from Pennsylvania. So we got you covered all over the country.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Nationwide.
everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. See you next month. Thank you.